At Christmas dinner, my sister's kid pushed his plate toward me and said, "Mom says you should serve, not eat." Everyone laughed. I calmly picked up my coat and walked out. That night, my mom texted, "Stay away." I replied, "Sure." The payments stay away too. By midnight there, angry calls started blowing up my phone. Can you imagine sitting down to Christmas dinner, surrounded by your family, only to have a child, your own nephew, shove his plate at you and declare, "Mom says you should serve, not eat. That's your job." That one shocking sentence, delivered with a smug, entitled grin, didn't just ruin Christmas. It detonated years of quiet sacrifice, exploding into the brutal truth that my own family saw me not as a loved one, but as their personal ATM, their obedient servant. And that night, walking out into the biting cold, I didn't know it, but I was igniting a war over a lifetime of emotional and financial exploitation. My name is Ambrose, and I'm 34. This painful story starts in a little town just outside Boston, where my parents ran a local hardware store. Honestly, it always felt like it was teetering on the edge of crumbling. Despite that constant financial tightrope, my earliest memories are mostly warm. My dad would let me stack inventory after school, teaching me the honest value of a hard day's work. My mom, bless her heart, always managed to make our small house feel like a cozy, safe home, even when money was practically non-existent. Then Laura came along when I was 3, and almost immediately, the family dynamic shifted. She was the undisputed princess. While I was expected to shoulder responsibilities at the store, Laura was free to pursue dance lessons and all the social activities her heart desired. My parents always had an excuse ready. "She's younger, Ambrose. She's a girl, more sensitive." And, like a good, obedient son, I just accepted it. I mean, what else was I supposed to do? When I was 17, a real crisis hit. A massive big-box hardware store opened up, a monstrous beast that threatened to swallow our small family business whole. And just like that, my modest college fund, the $8,000 I'd been meticulously saving, my ticket to a different future, became the ultimate sacrifice. "It's just for a little while, Ambrose," Dad promised, his voice heavy with what I now recognize as desperate hope. "Once business picks up, we'll pay you back double." That money, of course, never materialized. Neither did the store's prosperity. Instead of going to the state university as planned, I found myself working brutal day shifts at our family store, then clocking in for exhausting night shifts at a gas station. For 3 grueling years, I squeezed in community college classes whenever I possibly could, eventually transferring and finally finishing my computer science degree. Those years forged me. They taught me discipline, grit, and a kind of quiet resilience. While my friends were out partying, living the classic college dream, I was debugging code at 3 a.m., my brain fried from back-to-back shifts. But that determination paid off. I landed an entry-level IT job at a booming tech company, and through sheer, consistent effort and countless late nights, I climbed the ranks, becoming a senior systems administrator within 6 years. Laura's path, well, it couldn't have been more different. My parents, despite their struggles, somehow scraped together the money to send her to that same state university. But she dropped out after just 3 semesters, claiming it just wasn't the right environment for her creativity. What followed was a blur of dead-end jobs and a string of boyfriends who never stuck around. Then, when she was 26, she met Kevin. He was this charming real estate developer, drove a fancy car, made all the big promises. They married fast, and within a year, Tyler was born. For a little while, it truly seemed like Laura had found her fairy tale ending. Kevin's business was absolutely booming in the pre-recession housing market. They lived in this sprawling house, had all the trappings of success, and Laura, of course, never missed an opportunity to remind us all just how well she'd done for herself. Then, the inevitable. The housing market crashed, taking Kevin's business down with it almost overnight, revealing a horrifying mountain of debt. Their marriage, already fragile, shattered under the stress. By the time Tyler was 5, they were divorced. Kevin, the charmer, simply moved to Florida, vanishing from Tyler's life and sending minimal child support that rarely arrived on time. Laura and Tyler broken and broke, were forced to move back to our hometown. That's when the calls started. Ambrose, honey, we need to talk about your sister, Mom said, her voice dripping with that familiar, saccharine tone I'd grown to recognize, the one that always preceded a request for money. She and Tyler have nowhere to go. Your father and I would take them in, but, you know, our spare room is just too small, and Tyler, he needs his own space. He's a growing boy. I knew what was coming. I always did. What do you need, Mom? I asked, my voice already heavy with resignation. Laura found a nice 2-bedroom apartment, she continued, but she just needs help with the security deposit and first month's rent, just until she gets back on her feet. That first request was for a crisp $2,000. I sent it the very same day. I told myself it was temporary, just to help my sister through a crisis. I had no idea I was setting a precedent, paving the way for years of financial abuse. The requests just kept coming. Tyler's private school tuition, the public schools here just don't challenge him enough. Laura's car repairs, medical bills not covered by insurance. Each time, my parents acted as the sympathetic intermediaries, constantly assuring me that Laura was almost financially stable. 5 years bled into each other like this. My monthly contributions to Laura and Tyler's lives averaged around $1,500. Money that never, ever found its way into my retirement account or my own savings. I once calculated it. I had given over $90,000 to support them. Whenever I tried to even discuss reducing my support, family gatherings would instantly morph into tense, uncomfortable battlegrounds. Laura would make these dramatic, tearful exits, and my parents would immediately pull me aside, explaining, Ambrose, you're the successful one. You should help those less fortunate in the family. It was infuriating. Melanie, my girlfriend, was the first person to truly articulate what was happening. We met at a tech conference 3 years ago, and her no-nonsense perspective was incredibly refreshing. Ambrose, this isn't normal family support, she said, her eyes narrowed after witnessing one of Laura's phone calls, a demanding torrent about money for Tyler's summer camp. They're taking advantage of you. There's a huge difference between helping and enabling. I knew she was right. Deep down, I knew. But family loyalty, that insidious, powerful thing, runs so deep. The thought of cutting off my nephew from opportunities or seeing my sister truly struggle kept me writing those checks. Still, Melanie's words planted a seed of resentment, a tiny, thorny thing that grew larger each time Laura flaunted new designer clothes while simultaneously claiming she couldn't afford Tyler's school lunch program. The hypocrisy was galling. Despite all these festering tensions, I always looked forward to Christmas. It was the one time of year when family discord was supposedly set aside, replaced by tradition and togetherness. Each year, I'd pore over gifts, finding thoughtful presents for everyone, especially Tyler. Last year, it was the gaming console he'd been begging for, even though Laura had told me not to spend too much, then promptly complained when her gift card wasn't for the high-end boutique she preferred. This past Christmas, though, I was particularly excited. Melanie and I had been dating for 3 years, and I was planning to propose on New Year's Eve. I genuinely wanted my family to see how truly happy we were together. Looking back now, I should have recognized the glaring warning signs from previous holidays. Laura's constant backhanded compliments about my boring but stable job, Tyler's ever-growing sense of entitlement as he got older. But I just wanted to believe in the magic of Christmas, in the unbreakable strength of family bonds. Oh, how incredibly naive I was. Christmas morning started with such promise. Melanie and I woke early in my apartment, exchanged our own personal gifts, then began preparing dishes for the family dinner. I made my famous garlic mashed potatoes. Melanie baked her grandmother's pecan pie. Our kitchen filled with delicious smells, easy conversation, Christmas music playing softly in the background. Do you think Tyler will like the new laptop? I asked Melanie, carefully wrapping the expensive gift I'd bought for my now 11-year-old nephew. Between his private school and burgeoning interest in computer programming, I really thought it might nurture his potential. Melanie hesitated just for a moment. It's very generous, Ambrose. Just don't expect too much gratitude. You know how he can be. I brushed off her concern. It's Christmas. I said, forcing a smile. Everyone's nicer. At Christmas, we arrived at my parents' house at 2 p.m., our arms loaded with gifts and food. Mom greeted us with huge hugs, exclaiming over the pie. Dad helped carry things in, giving me a firm handshake that conveyed more affection than he typically expressed verbally. The house looked festive, adorned with the artificial tree Dad had bought on clearance years ago, now draped with decades of collected ornaments. Laura and Tyler should be here any minute, Mom said, checking her watch. You know your sister, always running a bit late. 45 excruciating minutes. Later, we heard Laura's car pull into the driveway. Tyler burst through the door first, immediately asking if we'd started opening presents yet. At 11, he had his mother's blonde hair and his absent father's tall build, but that unmistakable entitlement in his expression was entirely learned behavior. Laura followed, talking loudly on her phone about New Year's Eve plans at some exclusive restaurant I knew she couldn't afford. She held up a finger, silencing any greetings until she finished her conversation. When she finally acknowledged us, she gave Melanie and me quick, perfunctory hugs. Traffic was absolutely insane, she announced, even though we all lived within 15 minutes of each other, and Tyler was impossible to get moving this morning. The gift exchange proceeded, predictably, awkwardly. Tyler opened the laptop with minimal enthusiasm, immediately pointing out that it wasn't the exact model his friend Jacob had. This one has less storage, he complained, setting it aside without even a thank you. Laura examined her gift card to a mid-range department store with a tight, brittle smile. This is practical. Thanks, I guess. When Tyler opened Melanie's thoughtful gift of coding books, he didn't even try to hide his disappointment. Books? Seriously? Who gives books for Christmas? Tyler, I said, gently, trying to defuse the tension. Those are to help with your programming interests. Melanie picked them specially for you. Laura cut in before Tyler could respond. He's just being honest. Ambrose, not everyone gets excited about educational gifts. She turned to my girlfriend with a condescending smile. Melanie, when you have children of your own someday, you'll understand what actually makes them happy. I saw Melanie's shoulders tense, but she maintained her composure, her face a mask. My mother, bless her, quickly changed the subject, announcing it was time for dinner. The dining room table was set with Mom's best china, the silver flatware that only came out for special occasions. Dad sat at the head, Mom at the foot. Laura and Tyler took one side, while Melanie and I sat across from them. The table was laden with traditional dishes, turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce, and the sides Melanie and I had brought. Dad stood to offer a brief toast to family, he said, raising his glass, and another year together. May we all find happiness and success in the coming year. It was a generic holiday sentiment, but for a fleeting moment, as we all raised our glasses, I felt that familiar, desperate hope that this time, things would be different. As the oldest son, I had always been given the responsibility of serving the food. It was a family tradition I'd never questioned. I stood and began filling plates, starting with my mother. Then Laura and Tyler, my father, Melanie, and finally myself. I took care to give Tyler his favorite dark meat and extra mashed potatoes, just as he liked them. Throughout the meal, Tyler's behavior grew increasingly disruptive. He complained about the turkey being dry, even though it was perfectly cooked. He interrupted adult conversations with incessant demands for attention. Laura did absolutely nothing to correct him, instead laughing at his rudeness as if it were charming precociousness. Then came the moment that would change everything. As I reached for the gravy boat to add a little more to my own potatoes, Tyler suddenly shoved his plate toward me, sending a violent splash of cranberry sauce onto the pristine tablecloth. I need more stuffing, he announced, his voice sharp with command. Mom says you should serve, not eat. That's your job. The table went absolutely silent for a split second before erupting in a chorus of laughter. Laura's was the loudest, a vindictive, almost triumphant sound that seemed to carry years of simmering resentment. Kids say the darndest things, she managed, barely coherent between her cackles. My father chuckled uncomfortably, a nervous, weak sound. My mother put her hand to her mouth, giggling behind it, trying to hide her amusement. Only Melanie remained stone-faced, her eyes wide with a horrified disbelief. I sat there, my fork suspended in midair, as the full, sickening weight of Tyler's words sank in. This wasn't just a child's rudeness. This was a message, a carefully cultivated insult, one that Laura had obviously planted and nurtured. In their eyes, I wasn't family. I was the help. I was the wallet. I was the servant. I placed my fork down, carefully, deliberately, on my barely touched plate. The laughter gradually subsided as they finally noticed my expression. Ambrose, my mother started, her voice suddenly cautious. He's just a child. He doesn't mean anything by it. But the damage was done. I could feel something breaking inside me. Not just my heart, but the iron chains of obligation that had bound me to this toxic dynamic for years. Without a word, I stood up, placed my napkin beside my food, and walked to the coat closet in the hallway. Melanie followed immediately, concern etched across her beautiful face. "We're leaving," she whispered, her voice firm. I just nodded, unable to speak past the massive lump in my throat. "Good," she said, her eyes blazing with a quiet fury, reaching for her own coat. As we put on our outerwear, I heard Laura's voice from the dining room. Dismissive, cruel. "Oh, come on. Ambrose is being dramatic. Tyler was just joking around." We left without another word, the sound of the closing door cutting off whatever flimsy excuse my mother was beginning to formulate. The drive home was silent, thick with unspoken emotion. Melanie reached over and held my hand, offering wordless support. Christmas lights blurred through my unshed tears as we passed decorated houses where families hopefully treated each other with far more respect than mine had shown me. "You didn't deserve that," Melanie finally said as we pulled into my apartment complex. "None of it," I nodded, finding my voice at last. "I know." That night, I sat on my living room couch, staring at the small Christmas tree Melanie had helped me decorate. Its colorful lights blinked rhythmically, but they brought none of the joy I'd associated with the holiday since childhood. Melanie had gone to bed early, sensing I needed space, needed to process the monumental shift that had just occurred. My phone remained stubbornly silent for hours. No apology calls, no concerned text messages, just a deafening silence that spoke volumes about my family's complete lack of perspective on the incident. "They don't even think they did anything wrong," I said aloud to the empty room, the words tasting like ash. Just before midnight, my phone finally chimed with a message. My heart lifted, just for a second, foolishly hoping for an apology. Instead, I found a text from my mother that knocked the wind out of me. "You embarrassed us all with your behavior today. Stay away until you can. Apologize and act like family." I read the message 3 times, unable to believe what I was seeing. I was expected to apologize? For what? For not smiling while being humiliated? For leaving quietly instead of creating an even bigger scene? Melanie found me still staring at the phone. She must have heard me pacing, my anxiety a tangible thing. When I showed her the message, her expression hardened. "This is unbelievable," she said, sitting beside me, wrapping an arm around my trembling shoulders. "They've completely twisted reality. You know that, right? This is what manipulative people do when they're called out. They flip the script and make you the villain." Her words, sharp and clear, crystallized something I'd been feeling for years but couldn't articulate. For so long, I'd been cast in a role I never auditioned for. The endless provider, the emotional punching bag, the one who could be mistreated without consequence. "I'm done," I whispered, the words barely audible. Then, with more conviction, a steel emerging from the wreckage of my hurt. "I'm done." Melanie squeezed my hand. "What are you going to do?" I took a deep, shaky breath and typed a response I'd been holding back for years, the words burning with a long-suppressed fury. "Sure, the payments stay away too." My thumb hovered over the send button for a long, agonizing moment, then pressed down. There was no going back now. Within minutes, my phone exploded. First came a call from Laura, which I declined. Then, another and another. My parents' numbers followed in quick succession. Text messages began flooding in, first angry, then panicked, as the full meaning of my message finally sank in. Laura's texts were a chaotic stream. "What the hell is that supposed to mean? You can't do this to us. Answer your phone." My mom's messages shifted from disbelief to desperate pleas. Ambrose, call me immediately. You're overreacting. Think about Tyler. He's just a child. My dad's was curt. Son, let's talk about this like adults. The barrage continued, relentless, but I simply turned off my phone and placed it face down on the coffee table. For the first time in years, I would sleep without being accessible to their endless demands. Morning brought no clarity, just exhaustion and a dull, throbbing headache. When I finally turned my phone back on, I had 27 missed calls and 43 new text messages. Scrolling through them revealed a fascinating, disturbing evolution in tone, from indignant rage to utter disbelief, to the pathetic beginnings of bargaining. Laura's latest messages were frantic. Rent is due in 3 days. You know I don't have all of it. Tyler will lose his spot at Westbrook if tuition isn't paid by the 5th. Are you really going to punish a child for something I said? My parents had shifted strategies as well. Mom, I know you're upset, but family helps family. That's what we've always done. Dad, let's sit down and work out a reasonable arrangement. No need for extreme measures. Melanie read some of the messages over my shoulder, shaking her head. Notice there's still no apology anywhere. Just pure panic that the gravy train is stopping. She was absolutely right. Not one single message acknowledged how I'd been treated or showed an ounce of remorse for the years of taking advantage. It was all, every single word, about what they would lose without my financial support. I spent that day drafting and redrafting a longer response, trying desperately to find the right words to establish boundaries without burning bridges completely. In the end, I sent a simple message, only to my parents. I need some time. I'll reach out when I'm ready to talk. I blocked Laura's number entirely. I just couldn't face any more of her manipulative tactics. 3 days passed in blessed silence. I returned to work after the holiday break, trying to focus on normal life. On the 4th day, as I was walking through the office parking lot toward the building entrance, I heard someone call my name. Laura. She was leaning against my car, arms crossed, her face set in that petulant expression I recognized from childhood, the one she wore whenever she didn't get her way. My stomach plummeted. You're ignoring me, she said, her voice dripping with accusation as I approached. Very mature. I'm going to work, Laura. This isn't the place. Where's the place then? You won't answer my calls. You won't respond to texts. Meanwhile, I'm about to be evicted in Tyler's school is threatening to give away his spot. Several colleagues walked past, poorly disguising their intense interest in our very public conversation. I lowered my voice. I told Mom and Dad, I need time. That includes you. Her voice rose, ensuring everyone within earshot could hear. Time for what? To abandon your family? To punish a child because your feelings got hurt over a little joke? It wasn't a joke, I said firmly, meeting her gaze directly. And it wasn't just about Christmas. It's about years of taking and taking, without appreciation or respect. So, this is about gratitude, she sneered, throwing her hands up. You want us to grovel because you help out sometimes? Is that what family means to you? Keeping score, a small crowd of coworkers had gathered at a discreet distance, witnessing my intensely personal life unravel in the professional space I'd always meticulously kept separate from family drama. This conversation is over, Laura. I have to go to work. As I tried to move past her, she grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. You've turned into a real jerk, you know that? Wait until I tell Mom and Dad how you're treating me. They always said I was the one with the big heart in the family. Now everyone will see it. I gently removed her hand from my arm. Tell them whatever you want. It changes nothing. As I walked away, she called after me, her voice shrill with fury. You'll regret this, Ambrose. Family is forever, and you're throwing it away over nothing. I didn't turn back, but her words, sharp and poisonous, followed me throughout the entire day. Was I overreacting? Was I truly the villain in this story? But every time that doubt crept in, I remembered Tyler's face as he shoved that plate toward me. The absolute certainty in his eyes that he was entitled to my servitude. I remembered the collective laughter, the years of relentless financial drain, the way my needs, my dreams, my very existence always came last. No, I wasn't overreacting. I was finally reacting appropriately to years of profound mistreatment. Melanie remained my absolute rock, never pushing me to reconcile, but also never encouraging permanent estrangement. Whatever you decide, I support you, she said, her voice steady. Just make sure you're deciding from strength, not guilt. Then, on a Saturday afternoon, as Melanie and I were returning from grocery shopping, I spotted my father's truck parked in a visitor spot outside my apartment building. He was sitting inside, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring straight ahead, a picture of weary resignation. Do you want me to stay or give you privacy? Melanie asked as we pulled alongside. Stay, I said immediately. Please. Dad got out when he saw us, looking older, somehow, than I remembered from just a week ago. His shoulders were hunched, his expression weathered beyond his 61 years. Ambro. He nodded, then glanced at Melanie. Miss Melanie. Hello, Mr. Sullivan, she replied politely. An excruciatingly awkward silence stretched between us in the parking lot. Let's go inside, I finally suggested. Once in my apartment, Dad declined coffee or water, perching uncomfortably on the very edge of my sofa. His work boots, though clean, looked strangely out of place on my plush carpet. Your mother doesn't know I'm here, he began, removing his cap and nervously turning it over and over in his hands. She's still pretty upset. About what exactly? I asked, unable to keep the raw edge from my voice. That I left dinner, or that I stopped writing checks? Dad winced. That's not fair, son, isn't it? I countered, my voice rising a little. Because from where I'm sitting, the only time my family gets truly upset with me is when I stop providing something they want. Dad's face flushed. But then, something utterly unexpected happened. Instead of defending himself or my mother, his expression crumpled. I found something, he said, his voice barely a whisper, reaching into his jacket pocket. He pulled out several folded sheets of paper. Bank statements. Laura's. Confused, I took the papers he offered. As I unfolded them, Melanie moved closer, looking over my shoulder. Where did you get these? I asked, my voice barely a tremor. She left her laptop open. At our house. After everything that happened, he explained, I got suspicious. I started looking around. He looked down at his calloused hands, shame etched on his face. Never thought I'd be the kind of father who snoops through his daughter's things, but here we are. I scanned the statements, at first not fully comprehending what I was seeing. Then, patterns emerged. Regular deposits of varying amounts, many matching the exact sums I had given for specific expenses. But the withdrawals told a horrifyingly different story. She spent Tyler's tuition money on a spa weekend, I said, incredulous, pointing to a series of charges. Dad nodded grimly. And that money for his dental work went to designer purses. There's more. Keep looking. Page after page revealed a sickening pattern of deception. Laura had been systematically using the money I provided for her and Tyler's necessities on luxury items, lavish vacations, expensive restaurants, and designer clothing. Meanwhile, she had been telling our parents that I was giving her far less than the actual amounts, claiming she was constantly struggling to make ends meet on the pittance her brother provided. She told us Tyler has learning disabilities that require special programs, Dad said, his voice hollow, broken. She said you refused to help with those costs, so she was working 2 jobs to cover them. Your mother and I have been helping with groceries and utilities because Laura said you only paid part of the rent and none of the other expenses. The betrayal hit me in waves. Not just Laura's lies, but my parents' astonishing willingness to believe the absolute worst of me. And you never thought to ask me about any of this? I asked, my voice cracking with pain. You just assumed I was shortchanging my sister and nephew? Dad had the grace to look utterly ashamed. Laura always had a way of telling stories that made sense at the time. Said you made her promise not to tell us how little you were actually helping, that you were trying to look generous to the family while actually being tight-fisted. And that sounded like me to you? My voice was barely a whisper. Dad couldn't meet my eyes. She had explanations for everything. Said, you resented her for having a child when you didn't. Said you were saving for a big house with Melanie and didn't want to waste money on family. Melanie made a small sound of disbelief beside me. The worst part, Dad continued, his voice heavy with self-reproach, is that we gave her money too. Not as much as you, we don't have it, but enough that it hurt our retirement savings. We thought we were making up for what you wouldn't provide. I sat back, trying desperately to process it all. So what changed? I asked, my voice flat. Why look into her stories now? That Christmas dinner, Dad said, his gaze finally meeting mine, filled with a raw, agonizing sincerity. The look on your face when Tyler said that about serving, it didn't match what Laura had been telling us about you being selfish. And then when you said the payments would stop, the way she panicked, it just didn't add up. He leaned forward, eyes pleading. Ambrose, I'm not asking you to keep supporting Laura. God knows she's taken advantage enough. But your mother and I, we're getting older. The store barely breaks even most months. We were counting on having your help eventually, when we can't work anymore. And there it was. The real reason for his visit. Not just to reveal Laura's shocking deception, but to ensure his own financial safety net remained intact. So, you want me to keep supporting you and Mom? Just not Laura? I clarified, my voice laced with a bitter irony. Dad hesitated, then nodded. We're not like Laura. We wouldn't waste your help. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at nothing in particular. Behind me, I could feel the immense weight of my father's expectation and Melanie's concerned gaze. I need to think about all this, I finally said, my voice hoarse. I can't make any promises right now. Dad stood, slowly replacing his cap. I understand. Just don't punish us for Laura's mistakes. We're still your parents. After he left, I immediately called my financial advisor. It was time to get a clear, unvarnished picture of exactly how much supporting my family had truly cost me over the years. The numbers were staggering. Beyond the direct payments, the lost opportunity for investment growth meant I had effectively sacrificed hundreds of thousands in potential retirement savings. You've been financially abused, Melanie said bluntly, her voice devoid of judgment as we reviewed the figures. There's no other way to put it. That night, I drafted a lengthy email addressed to my entire family. I detailed exactly how much I had given, where I had been told it was going, and how it had devastatingly affected my own financial security. I established clear, unequivocal boundaries moving forward. No more open-ended support. No more guilt-based requests. No more being treated as the family ATM. It was the hardest letter I'd ever written. But as I clicked send, I felt something profound shift inside me. For the first time in years, I was standing up for myself, not just reacting to their needs and demands. Whatever happened next, I knew, with a fierce certainty, that I couldn't go back to the way things were. 3 days after sending my email, I received a terse message from my mother asking me to come to their house Sunday afternoon to discuss the situation as a family. My stomach churned at the prospect, but I knew this confrontation was inevitable and, more importantly, necessary. Do you want me to come with you? Melanie asked as I prepared to leave. Part of me desperately wanted her support, her comforting presence, but another part knew I needed to face my family. Truly face them on my own. I think this is something I need to do myself, I told her, but thank you for offering. Before leaving, I gathered all the financial records I had meticulously organized over the past week. Bank statements, copies of checks, text messages requesting money, and a comprehensive spreadsheet showing the total amounts given over 5 years. I wasn't walking into this discussion unprepared. When I arrived at my parents' modest ranch-style home, 3 cars were already in the driveway. My parents', Laura's, and surprisingly my Aunt Patricia's, my mother's sister, who lived an hour away. I hadn't expected an audience for this particular family drama. Mom opened the door before I could even knock, her expression a careful, unreadable blank. Everyone's in the living room, she said, by way of greeting, her voice stiff and formal. The atmosphere inside was thick with tension, palpable enough to cut with a knife. Dad sat in his recliner, looking profoundly uncomfortable. Laura perched on the very edge of the couch, arms crossed defensively, a coiled spring of resentment. Tyler was unexpectedly present, sitting in the corner, engrossed in his phone, occasionally glancing up with an almost clinical curiosity. Aunt Patricia sat quietly in a dining room chair that had been brought in to accommodate the gathering, her expression thoughtful, observant. No one spoke as I took the last remaining seat, placing my heavy folder of documents pointedly on the coffee table in front of me. "Thank you for coming, Ambrose," Mom finally said, her voice still formal, as if addressing a stranger. "We thought it was important to clear the air after your allegations." The word choice made my jaw tighten, a flash of pure anger. "They're not allegations, Mom. They're facts, fully documented." I tapped the folder for emphasis. Laura immediately went on the offensive, her voice sharp with indignation. "So you've been keeping receipts on family help? Who does that? Only someone looking to throw it back in our faces eventually." "I keep records of all my finances," I replied evenly, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "That's just responsible money management. We're not here to attack each other," Dad interjected, throwing a sharp warning look at Laura. "We need to sort this out, like adults." I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm raging inside me. "I agree. So, let's start with the truth. Laura, would you like to explain to Mom and Dad how you spent the tuition money I sent for Tyler last September?" Laura's face flushed a deep, angry red. "I don't have to justify every penny to you. Sometimes expenses shift and money needs to be reallocated. Reallocated to Nordstrom and a weekend at Stony Creek Spa." I pulled out the bank statement Dad had shown me, along with my own record of the transfer specifically designated for Tyler's fall tuition. Mom gasped softly, her hand flying to her mouth, looking frantically between Laura and the damning documents. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under as a single mother," Laura snapped, her voice breaking a little. "Sometimes I need self-care to be a good parent. Tyler doesn't mind public school. Anyway." From the corner, Tyler's head shot up. "What? You said Westbrook had a fire and had to close for renovations. You said that's why I had to change schools." The room fell into an utterly stunned silence as we all absorbed this new, shocking revelation. Laura had been lying not just to us, but to her own son. "Tyler, honey, it's complicated," Laura began, scrambling for an explanation. But I cut her off. "Actually, it's not complicated at all." I opened my folder and began laying out documents, one by one, methodically, on the coffee table. "Here are copies of every check and transfer I've sent for specific expenses over the past 5 years. And here, I placed down another stack, are the bank records showing where that money actually went." My mother picked up the papers with trembling hands. As she flipped through them, her face paled, her eyes widening with each new discovery. "Laura, is this true? All these expenses? Hair extensions, a weekend in Atlantic City?" "Don't act so shocked, Mom," Laura said bitterly, her voice dripping with venom. "You and Dad have been helping me too. Did you think your money was only going to bills and Tyler's needs?" "We trusted you," Dad said, his voice low and dangerous, a tone I hadn't heard from him in years. "We've been dipping into our retirement to help you while you've been, what? Living it up on our sacrifices." "Oh, please." Laura rolled her eyes, a gesture of pure contempt. "Retirement? The store barely makes enough to keep the lights on. You were going to end up depending on Ambrose anyway. I just cut out the middleman." Her callousness, her utter lack of empathy, stunned even me. Tyler, who had abandoned his phone entirely, was watching the adults with wide, horrified eyes as his mother's deceptions unraveled before him. Aunt Patricia, who had remained silent until now, spoke up, her voice calm but firm. "Laura, do you hear yourself? Your brother and parents have been supporting you for years, and you're acting entitled to their money rather than grateful for their help. Stay out of this, Aunt Pat." Laura snapped, her face contorted with fury. "You don't know anything about my situation." "I know enough," Patricia replied calmly. "I know your brother has been paying your rent while you buy designer clothes. I know your parents have been helping with utilities while you take spa weekends. The question is, when were you planning to stand on your own 2 feet?" Laura stood up, her face flushed crimson with anger. "I don't have to listen to this. Come on, Tyler. We're leaving." "Sit down," Dad commanded, in a voice I hadn't heard since my own childhood, a voice that brooked no argument. "You don't get to walk away from this." To my utter surprise, Laura complied, sinking back onto the couch, defeated, for now. "Ambrose," my mother said, still looking through the damning financial records, her hands trembling. These amounts. I had no idea. Laura told us you were giving her a few $100s here and there, not this. She pointed to the total at the bottom of my spreadsheet, her finger resting on the staggering six-figure sum. I trusted that the money was going where I was told it would go, I said quietly, my voice raw with the depth of my hurt. For Tyler's education, for their housing, for necessities. It was all for necessities, Laura insisted, her voice rising in a desperate plea. Just because you don't understand what it takes to raise a child doesn't mean you get to judge how I spend money. Mom, Tyler's small voice cut through the tension, heartbreakingly clear. He had moved from his corner, now standing near the coffee table, his eyes fixed on the financial documents. Is that true? Uncle Ambrose has been paying for everything. Laura reached for him, her hand hovering. Tyler, honey, it's complicated. Adults help each other out. Tyler stepped away from her grasp, his face a mask of dawning horror. But you said Uncle Ambrose was stingy. You said he only helped a little bit because he had to, not because he wanted to. The look of profound betrayal on Tyler's young face was absolutely heartbreaking. Whatever Laura's faults, she was still his mother, and seeing her exposed as a liar was clearly devastating to him. Tyler, I said gently, my voice softened by pity. The money isn't important. What matters is that we're family, and families should treat each other with respect. Like the respect you showed walking out of Christmas dinner. Laura countered, her venom returning. Dad slammed his hand down on the armrest of his chair, a loud crack that echoed in the silent room. Enough, Laura. After seeing these records, I'm ashamed we didn't stand up for Ambrose at Christmas. That comment about him serving rather than eating. Did you put that idea in Tyler's head? Laura's silence was answer enough. I want to know, I said, addressing my parents directly, my voice strained. How you could believe I was being stingy when I've been sending substantial amounts every single month for years. Did you really think so little of me? Mom had the grace to look profoundly ashamed. Laura can be very convincing. She'd tell us you had refused to help with something important, and we'd give her money, thinking we were filling gaps you wouldn't cover. I never thought to verify her stories. And that text on Christmas night, I pressed, telling me to stay away, until I could apologize. I was upset, Ambrose, Mom admitted, her voice trembling. Laura was crying, saying you'd humiliated her in front of everyone by walking out. I reacted without thinking. Tyler, who had been listening intently, suddenly turned to Laura. Is that why you told me to say that thing about Uncle Ambrose serving? You said it would be a funny joke everyone would laugh at. Laura grabbed his arm, her eyes wide with panic. That's enough, Tyler. We're going home. No. Tyler pulled away, tears now streaming down his face. You lied to me. You made me be mean to Uncle Ambrose on purpose. Laura stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly across the floor. I don't have to take this. You're all ganging up on me because I'm the only one brave enough to ask for what I need instead of suffering in silence. What you need versus what you want seem to be very different things, Aunt Patricia observed, her voice cool and pointed. Tyler, we're leaving now. Laura's voice left no room for argument. Tyler looked utterly torn, glancing desperately between his mother and the rest of the family. At 11 years old, he was old enough to understand something significant was happening, but still too young to fully grasp the years of manipulation and financial abuse being exposed. Can I come back later? He asked, quietly, looking at my father. Before Dad could answer, Laura grabbed her purse and Tyler's arm, pulling him toward the door. Don't you dare turn my son against me, she hissed at the room in. General, this isn't over. The door slammed behind them, leaving a heavy, ringing silence in the living room. Mom was quietly crying. Dad looked utterly shell-shocked. Aunt Patricia simply shook her head in disappointment. I'm sorry, Ambrose, Mom finally said, her voice raw with grief. We should have trusted you more and Laura less. It wasn't enough. Not nearly enough to make up for years of being taken advantage of while being painted as the villain. But it was a start. Where do we go from here? Dad asked, suddenly looking every one of his 61 years, the exhaustion pulling at his features. I don't know, I answered honestly. But we can't go back to how things were. I won't be Laura's personal bank anymore, and I won't be treated like a servant rather than family. And us? Mom asked tentatively. Your father and I, we made mistakes, believing Laura's lies, but we're still your parents. I looked at them both. The people who had raised me, who had taken my college fund. For the family business, who had always expected me to sacrifice for others while demanding little of my sister. There was love there, buried under layers of enabling behavior that had created this whole impossible situation. I need time, I said finally, my voice softening just a fraction. And if we're going to have a relationship moving forward, things need to change. No more asking for money for Laura. No more guilt trips. No more taking my support for granted. They nodded solemnly. And though no firm resolution was reached that day, something fundamental had shifted. For the first time, they were seeing the family dynamic through my eyes, and they clearly didn't like what they saw. As I drove home, I felt neither triumph nor complete closure, just a weary relief that the truth was finally brutally out, and a tentative hope that maybe, just maybe, something healthier could grow from the ashes of these revelations. 2 months after that explosive family confrontation, winter had reluctantly given way to early spring. The emotional landscape had changed just as dramatically as the physical one, with new boundaries starting to take root like the first tenacious green shoots pushing through thawed soil. I had started seeing a therapist, Dr. Marissa Jenkins, who specialized in family dynamics and financial abuse. Our weekly sessions helped me understand, with stark clarity, that what I'd experienced wasn't normal family support. It was systematic exploitation of my deep-seated sense of obligation. Generosity should never be expected or demanded, she reminded me during one particularly difficult session. It should be freely given and gratefully received. Melanie and I had grown incredibly closer through the entire ordeal. Her unwavering support and incredibly clear perspective helped anchor me when guilt or uncertainty threatened to pull me back into the old patterns. We were talking seriously about our future together now, with plans for me to officially propose once I felt I had fully regained my financial and emotional footing. My contact with my parents had been limited to weekly phone calls, a boundary I'd carefully established to give myself much-needed space while not cutting them off entirely. These conversations were stilted at first, awkward and hesitant, but gradually became more natural as we carefully navigated the treacherous waters of our new relationship. Laura's situation had, predictably, deteriorated rapidly without my financial support. Within weeks of our confrontation, she had been forced to downsize to a one-bedroom apartment in a far less desirable neighborhood, with Tyler sleeping on a pull-out couch in the living room. His private school had, indeed, given away his spot when tuition wasn't paid, and he was now attending the local public middle school. Through my parents, I heard about Laura's escalating financial crisis. She had maxed out credit cards, taken out high-interest loans, and was now, finally, facing the very real consequences of years of profound financial irresponsibility. Part of me, a small, stubborn part, felt a pang of guilt, but Dr. Jenkins helped me recognize that these were natural consequences of Laura's own choices, not some cruel punishment I was inflicting. Your sister is an adult who made decisions, she reminded me, her voice firm. You didn't create this situation by stopping your support. She created it by becoming dependent on it and misusing it. Laura had, of course, taken to spreading her version of events throughout the extended family. According to my cousin Drew, she was telling anyone who would listen that I had abandoned her and Tyler out of petty revenge for a child's innocent comment. Some relatives, naturally, believed her, sending me disappointed messages about family loyalty. Others, who had quietly witnessed Laura's entitled behavior over the years, were more skeptical. The most surprising ally emerged in Aunt Patricia, who had been present at the confrontation. She had apparently seen similar toxic dynamics play out in her own family and recognized the pattern immediately. She began quietly countering Laura's narrative, sharing the undeniable truth about the financial records and Laura's long history of deceptions. Some people will believe what they want to believe, Ambrose, Aunt Patricia told me during a rare, quiet lunch meeting. But those who Matter will see the truth eventually. My parents struggled, painfully, with their reduced contact with Tyler, who had always been the absolute center of their grandparental affection. Mom would sometimes end our weekly calls in tears, mentioning that Laura was using Tyler as leverage, allowing visits only when they provided gifts or, inevitably, money. We made so many mistakes, Dad admitted during one of our calls, his voice thick with regret. With both of you, but especially with Laura. We never taught her to stand on her own. It's not too late, I suggested carefully, my voice gentle. She needs to learn independence now more than ever. We're trying, he sighed. It's harder than we thought. She knows exactly which buttons to push. And then, almost unbelievably, they began asking my advice on how to handle Laura's constant requests. It was a complete reversal of roles that felt both strange and incredibly validating. I suggested they consult with a financial advisor about protecting their retirement funds and establishing clear boundaries with Laura. To my genuine surprise, they actually followed through, meeting with a professional who helped them create a sustainable plan that didn't involve draining their life savings to support Laura's extravagant lifestyle. Freed from the relentless financial and emotional drain of supporting my sister, I found unexpected growth in my career. The reduced stress and increased focus led directly to a promotion at work, ironically improving my financial situation just as I had completely stopped sharing it with Laura. The bitter thought occasionally crossed my mind that if I had established these boundaries years earlier, I might have achieved this success much, much sooner. 3 months after that disastrous Christmas, my parents invited Melanie and me for dinner. The first family meal since the infamous holiday. Laura was notably absent, having flatly refused the invitation when she learned I would be there. The dinner was awkward, no doubt, but civil. Mom had prepared my favorite lasagna, a peace offering of sorts. Dad opened a bottle of good wine. He'd been saving for a truly special occasion. We carefully avoided any contentious topics, sticking to safe, neutral subjects like Melanie's work project and Dad's garden plans for spring. As we were preparing to leave, the doorbell rang. Mom answered it to find Tyler standing alone on the porch, out of breath and red-faced. I rode my bike, he explained, glancing nervously behind him, a nervous energy emanating from him. Mom doesn't know I'm here. My parents quickly ushered him inside, concerned about his unsupervised 3-mile journey. Tyler, honey, does your mother know where you are? Mom asked, already reaching for her phone. Please, don't call her yet. Tyler begged, his voice small. I just wanted to see Uncle Ambrose before he left. I was touched and profoundly confused by this unexpected visit. Tyler and I had always had a decent relationship, but we'd never been particularly close. The Christmas incident and subsequent family drama had seemingly created an unbridgeable distance between us. What's up, buddy? I asked, kneeling slightly to meet his eye level, though at 11, he was already growing tall. Tyler fidgeted with his jacket zipper. I wanted to say sorry for Christmas. Mom told me to say that thing about serving, and I knew it wasn't nice, but I did it anyway because I wanted her to be happy with me. The simple apology, delivered with such earnest, unvarnished regret, caught me completely off guard. Thank you, Tyler. That means a lot. And also, he continued, gaining a little confidence, I want you to know I really, really like the laptop you got me. Mom made me act like I didn't, but it's awesome. I use it for my coding projects at school. This admission brought an unexpected lump to my throat. How many other genuine moments, how many other small kindnesses had been poisoned by Laura's manipulation over the years? I'm glad you like it. I managed, my voice thick with emotion. Maybe sometime you can show me what you're working on. Tyler nodded eagerly. That would be cool. Mom says you're really good with computers. Speaking of your mom, Melanie interjected gently, her voice soft. She's probably worried. Sick about you. We should let her know you're safe. Tyler's face fell. She's going to be super. Matt, Dad placed a reassuring hand on Tyler's shoulder. Let me talk to her. I'll explain. You just wanted to visit, and there's no need for her to be upset. While Dad made the call, Tyler asked quietly, his eyes fixed on me. Are you not coming to family stuff anymore because of what? I said, no, Tyler. I assured him, my voice firm but kind. Adult relationships are complicated. What happened at Christmas was just one small part of much bigger issues between your mom and me. None of this is your fault. But Mom says you abandoned us because you're selfish. I chose my words carefully, acutely aware of the delicate position I was in. I helped your mom for a long time because I care about both of you. But sometimes adults need to make hard decisions about how to use their money and time. It doesn't mean I don't care about you. Tyler seemed to consider this, his young brow furrowed in thought. Mom says we had to move because you stopped helping us. Your mom is responsible for her own finances, just like I'm responsible for mine. The choices she makes are hers, not mine. It wasn't a complete explanation, but it was as honest as I could be without disparaging Laura to her son. Dad returned, looking resigned, defeated. She's on her way to pick him up. She's not happy. The 20 minutes we waited for Laura were filled with Tyler enthusiastically showing me his latest coding project on his phone. Despite everything, I found myself genuinely impressed with his aptitude and creativity. There was so much potential in him. If only it could be nurtured properly. Laura's arrival was announced by the screech of tires in the driveway. She burst through the door without knocking, eyes wild with panic that quickly transformed to raw anger when she saw Tyler calmly sitting with me. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice rising to a frantic pitch. "Tyler, I've been worried sick. How dare you leave without telling me?" "I'm sorry, Mom," Tyler said, shrinking back, his earlier confidence completely gone. "I just wanted to see everyone. Get in the car now." Her tone left no room for argument. As Tyler gathered his things, Laura turned her fury on me. "I suppose you think this is funny," encouraging him to sneak around behind my back. "I had nothing to do with Tyler coming here," I said evenly, my voice a quiet, unwavering contrast to her rage. "But I'm glad he did. He's welcome to visit me anytime." "That's not your decision to make," she snapped, her eyes blazing. "I'm his mother. I decide who he spends time with." "Laura," my mother interjected, her voice gentle, pleading. "Tyler just wanted to see his uncle. There's no need to make this into a bigger issue." "Of course you take his side," Laura said bitterly, venomously. "Everyone takes perfect Ambrose's side now." Tyler reappeared, looking utterly miserable. "I'm ready, Mom." Laura grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the door. "We're never coming back here," she announced dramatically, her voice ringing with a false finality. "You've all chosen sides, and it's clear where your loyalty lies." After they left, we stood in stunned silence for a moment. "That poor boy," Melanie finally said, her voice soft with pity. My mother wiped away a tear. "We should have done better by both our children," she said softly, her voice filled with regret. "Especially Laura. Maybe then she wouldn't be this way." There was nothing to say to that. The damage had been done long ago, through years of different expectations and enabling behavior. All we could do now was try to move forward with greater awareness and healthier boundaries. As Melanie and I drove home that night, I realized something profoundly important. Despite the pain and conflict, I felt lighter. The immense burden of resentment I'd carried for years was, finally, beginning to lift. I wasn't responsible for fixing Laura or for making my parents understand. I was only responsible for my own choices and my own boundaries. For the first time in my adult life, that felt like enough. 1 year after the Christmas dinner that changed everything, I stood in my parents' kitchen, helping my father prepare the turkey while Mom and Melanie worked on side dishes. The engagement ring on Melanie's finger caught the light as she chopped vegetables, a constant, sparkling reminder of how much had changed in just 12 short months. I had proposed on her birthday in September, after careful financial planning that ensured we were starting our life together on solid ground. Without the relentless drain of supporting Laura, I had been able to save for a modest but beautiful ring and begin building a down payment for our future home. "Ambrose, can you check if that timer went off?" Mom called, her hands deep in pumpkin pie filling, her voice light. The easy domesticity of the moment struck me, a stark contrast to the tension-filled holidays of previous years. My relationship with my parents had slowly, painstakingly healed over months of honest conversations, firm boundary setting, and mutual, dedicated effort. They had finally come to understand the immense harm caused by years of unequal expectations between Laura and me. And while they couldn't undo the past, they were committed to a healthier future. Laura's journey had been far more complicated. The first 6 months after our confrontation were marked by escalating hostility. She refused to speak to me directly, communicating only through increasingly desperate demands relayed by our parents. When it finally became undeniably clear that my boundaries were firm, her anger had gradually given way to a grudging acceptance of her new financial reality. Necessity, it turned out, proved to be an incredibly effective teacher. By summer, Laura had secured a full-time administrative position at a local insurance office, her first stable employment in years. She complained constantly about the work, the pay, and the indignity of having a boss, but she showed up every single day and gradually, slowly, began rebuilding her financial independence. Tyler had perhaps shown the most remarkable growth. After initial struggles adjusting to public school, he had found his niche in the computer science club and made genuine friends who shared his interests rather than his mother's fleeting, perceived status. Our relationship had strengthened through occasional weekend visits that Laura, reluctantly, permitted, during which I mentored him in coding projects and provided the consistent mail guidance his absent father had never offered. The doorbell rang, interrupting my reflections. Mom wiped her hands on her apron, looking nervous, her eyes darting to the door. That must be them. This would be the first time Laura had agreed to attend a family gathering where I was present since last Christmas. The negotiations to make this happen had been incredibly delicate, with my parents serving as weary diplomats between warring factions. In the end, Laura had accepted, but on one strict condition. There would be absolutely no discussion of financial matters during dinner. Dad opened the door, his voice carrying down the hall, hearty and genuine. "Merry Christmas. Come in, come in." Tyler entered first, now 12 and noticeably taller than last year. "Hi, Grandpa. Merry Christmas." He spotted me in the kitchen doorway, and his genuine enthusiasm as he rushed to show me his newest app project on his phone warmed my heart, a pure, unadulterated joy. Laura followed more slowly, her expression guarded but, to my immense relief, not overtly hostile. She nodded a curt greeting in my direction before embracing our mother. "The house looks nice," she offered, a small, fragile olive branch. Dinner preparations continued with everyone finding their roles. Laura, surprisingly, helped set the table while Tyler assisted Dad with carrying dishes. Melanie and I exchanged glances. Across the kitchen, a silent communication passing between us. So far, so good. When we finally gathered around the table, Dad stood for his traditional toast. "To family," he said simply, raising his glass, his eyes crinkling at the corners, "and to new beginnings." We all raised our glasses, even Laura, though her smile remained tight, a faint, almost imperceptible curve. As we began passing dishes, an unexpected moment of tension arose when the mashed potatoes reached Laura at the same time as the gravy boat reached me. There was a brief, awkward pause as everyone, it seemed, remembered last year's catastrophic comment about serving. Then Tyler, with timing that could not possibly have been coached, took the serving spoon from his mother and turned to me. "Uncle Ambrose," he said, his voice clear and earnest, "would you like me to serve you first? You made these, right?" The simple gesture, so clearly intended to right a past wrong, brought a lump to my throat so large I could barely swallow. "Thank you, Tyler. That's very thoughtful." As Tyler carefully spooned potatoes onto my plate, I caught Laura watching him with an unreadable expression. When he finished and turned to her, she squeezed his shoulder gently, a silent, almost imperceptible acknowledgement of his kindness. The meal progressed with cautious, measured conversation. We discussed safe topics, Tyler's school projects, Dad's woodworking hobby, Melanie's, and my wedding plans for the coming spring. Laura spoke little, but listened attentively, occasionally offering brief comments or questions that suggested she was making a genuine effort to engage. After dinner, as we moved to the living room for gift exchange, Mom pulled me aside, her voice a low whisper. "Your sister's been seeing a therapist. Has been for a few months now. She didn't want me to tell you, but I thought you should know. She's trying." This unexpected information shifted something profound in my perception of Laura, the sister I knew would have considered therapy beneath her, a sign of weakness rather than strength. That she was actively seeking help suggested a level of self-awareness I hadn't given her credit for. The gift exchange was modest compared to previous years. We had all agreed to focus on thoughtfulness rather than extravagance. I had carefully selected books related to Tyler's coding interests, along with a subscription to an online programming course. For Laura, after much deliberation, I had chosen a professional portfolio and planner, a practical, quiet acknowledgement of her new working life. When Laura opened her gift, she examined it silently for a long moment. "This is actually perfect for my job," she finally said, meeting my eyes briefly. A tiny spark of genuine gratitude in hers. "Thank you." It wasn't a gush of gratitude, but from Laura, it was significant progress. Her gift to me was equally telling, a simple framed photograph of Tyler and me from a recent weekend visit, caught in a moment of pure, unadulterated laughter as we worked on a project together. The frame bore a small, elegant engraved plate. "Family bonds." I looked up in surprise to find Laura watching me uncertainly. Tyler picked out the frame, she said, deflecting credit. "But I thought you might like the picture." "I do," I assured her, genuinely touched. "Very much." As the evening began to wind down, Laura approached me while the others were distracted with dessert preparations. "Can we talk outside for a minute?" she asked, already reaching for her coat, her voice hesitant. On the front porch, away from curious family ears, Laura hugged herself against the crisp December chill. "I'm not going to apologize," she began bluntly. I braced myself for confrontation, for the old Laura, but she continued in an unexpected direction. "At least, not with words. They seem inadequate, and honestly, I'm still working through a lot with my therapist about why I did what I did." She looked out at the darkened street rather than at me, her silhouette stark against the porch light. "But I want you to know I'm trying to be better. For Tyler. For myself." "That's good to hear," I said carefully, searching for the right words. "My therapist says I developed unhealthy patterns because I was always rescued from consequences." A hint of her old bitterness crept in. Apparently, being the favorite child isn't as advantageous as it seemed. We were both damaged by those dynamics. I offered a quiet truth. "In different ways." She nodded slowly, a profound weariness in her gesture. "Maybe so." After a pause, she added, almost shyly, "Tyler really looks up to you, you know. He talks about you all the time. The responsible uncle who works with computers and always keeps his promises." The implied comparison to herself hung in the air, a silent, heavy weight. But for once, Laura didn't seem resentful of it. "He's a great kid," I said sincerely. "You've done some things right." A ghost of a smile, fleeting and fragile, crossed her face. "One or two, perhaps?" She straightened, signaling the end of our conversation. "Anyway, I just wanted you to know I'm working on things. It's going to take time." "Time is something we all have," I replied, a quiet sense of peace settling over me. As we rejoined the family inside, I felt a sense of closure that had finally, deeply, landed. Not everything was resolved. Perhaps it never would be completely. But we were moving forward, inch by painful inch, rather than remaining trapped in old, destructive patterns. Later that evening, as Melanie and I drove home, she asked, "How are you feeling about everything?" I considered the question carefully, a thoughtful silence filling the car. "Hopeful, I think. Not naive, but hopeful." "That's a good place to be," she agreed, squeezing my hand, her warmth a steady comfort. The past year had taught me painful, but necessary, lessons about family boundaries and self-respect. I had learned that true family support flows from love, not obligation. That healthy boundaries aren't selfish, but absolutely essential. That standing up for yourself doesn't mean abandoning others. It just means refusing to be abandoned by them yourself. Most importantly, I had learned that it's never too late to change destructive patterns, to heal old wounds, and to build something genuinely better from the rubble of broken expectations. As we pulled into our apartment complex, I thought about the journey ahead, marriage to Melanie, building our own family, continuing to navigate the complicated relationships with my parents and sister. None of it would be perfect or easy, but for the first time in years, I felt equipped to Face those challenges with integrity and with strength. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who took advantage of your generosity? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below and let me know if you think I made the right choice by finally setting boundaries. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if it resonated with you. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the greatest act of love is having the courage to say no when necessary.